Nika, welcome to the Astroben podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for invite. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. I'm very excited because the UK is weeks, if not days, away from its first launch from UK soil with Virgin Orbit, um, which we probably won't get to see much because it's essentially getting taken up on a 747 and it's going to be launching somewhere over the Atlantic. But it's still a pretty exciting time. Um,
Yep.
yeah, can't complain, man. Can't complain. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Why don't we start with you giving me a bit of information about Altair Enterprises? So straight from the top, who is Altair? What is Altair? Give me your best elevator pitch.
Perfect. So Altair Enterprises, it's a space education organization in the core, and our main goal is to accelerate the growth of the new space economy, either through providing on-demand learning, well, either through fostering the international cooperation by organizing annual conferences, or by connecting the employers that are seeking for talent with the new individuals that are looking to for employment opportunities in the industry. So that's kind of the three main pillars that we are active on.
Okay, that's awesome. And you've got yourself and your business partner Martinez. Um, did you know each other before you started Altair?
Yes, we have cooperated before. We were part of. We were actually doing a nonprofit here in the country of Georgia, where we first initially met. We have been doing some smaller events, some outreach mainly, and then obviously we moved it up and scaled it up into Altair Enterprises, and then also implemented those new activities that we are doing, which we're gonna cover also in this episode, I guess so.
Oh, 100%.
In more detail.
100%. Did you both have a passion for the space industry? I kind of assume that everyone
Yes,
that founds
yes.
a space industry company is obsessed with space and Star Trek or something, but it's not always the case.
Yes, we are obsessed. We are, yeah. I cannot speak for Martinez, but for myself personally, it started very early. This obsession with space. So Georgia, where I'm from originally, so this country is post-Soviet country. And what I had when I was a kid, I had this old USSR telescope that's around like 40 years old probably now as we speak. And I used to, together with my grandfather, we would always gaze at the moon on the clear night sky, and that's kind of when this initial passion towards space began. And then obviously later, once I started learning more, and now the internet allows for this research and to see those, if it's movies that we're talking about, like if we talk about the old also series like Battlestar Galactica and similar to that, those just amplified this everything, and then obviously started to pursue the space industry.
Absolutely. So Altair, as you said, you organised an international space convention. Why don't you tell me a bit
Yep.
about that? Because I've been to a few space industry events, and I've done a few online ones as well. But I was sort of quite fascinated by the fact that the ISC, which I assume is sort of for short, is what it's called. It's remote only. So is this something that you kind of came up with over COVID, or did you have the idea for it to be remote only before?
Yep, that's a great question, and actually, that seems a bit strange to the individuals. We had a very specific plan why we decided to do it virtual, so we're going to cover that. Because actually, in 22, just in September, just around a month and a week before, we did IC 2022 in Turkey, which was in person fully, so fully in person event. We had so this was very special event for this region because it covered Caucasus region, which consists of four countries: Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. And what this means covered, this means that the representatives from those countries, either from the government side or the private side, if it's the private space industry side, or if it's the government agencies, or if it's individuals that are also in adjacent industries like agriculture, maritime, defense, and intelligence. So this event allowed those individuals to meet with those leading organizations in the space industry. If we're talking about companies like Maxar or Ariane Space or Nanorax or Redwire and obviously Spire and so forth, was very impactful to accelerate Turkish economy. A lot of great conversations happened. A lot of deals were made on the spot also now Now as we see, people are already coming back, shaking hands, putting signatures on the papers also. So very impactful. And then 23, obviously it's fully virtual, as you mentioned. And the reason for that is simple. As we now see, those financial institutions are predicting that in 23 we're going to slide into a recession. And also what's happened as we speak, literally with hundreds of companies in the space industry, if it's for 22 edition or for 23, we see the trend that now the companies for the next year are decreasing their budgets for the operational budgets for the marketing and mainly exhibitions and events. And because of that, instead of companies going to 15, 20 events a year on average, as they used to do before, next year they said we're going to go to 5 major. So I'm not saying that's all the companies that are doing that, but a very huge percent, as we encountered in our personal research, right? Because of that, we decided to do 2023 virtual, just to offer those organizations and companies the opportunity to showcase their solutions and display what they are working on in a cost-effective way, without having to travel, without having to get the tickets for and the accommodation and all this kind of things. And also it allows for a global reach, because when you're doing an event, even though it could be a big event like the ones that are happening in Europe, for example, and just like IEC happened in Turkey just recently, 22 edition that we did, still it lacks individuals from those developing countries, right? Because some of those countries and organizations and companies, they simply don't have the operational budgets to travel to those events, to meet individuals. And for companies also, now they are targeting those regions, but it's also hard for them to reach them, just because you need to travel first. You're kind of betting, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You have to invest the time, the capital up front, just to shake hands, get to know individuals, and then maybe something will happen, right? So because with this online event, we're going to solve that issue and help organizations with the deal flow and the potential leads in this tough time of recession, 23.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's slightly depressing thinking about a global recession. And I actually work in the hospitality industry, so the battle was to trying to convince, especially corporate clients, to put on and attend physical events as opposed to virtual is definitely a very current thing. I went to the International Astronautical Congress in Paris. Only a few weeks ago. It seemed like ages ago. And I think it really reminded me the power of in-person events. But I think it's mainly the stuff that goes on outside of the conference, which is the true value of physical events. It's the networking, going for coffees, going for dinners with peers. So it's not necessarily the actual conference, most of which it can be delivered to the same extent online. And actually, I think it's smart to kind of, as a business decision, to focus just on virtual for next year.
Yep. Obviously, in-person events are, just as you mentioned, people prefer it because it's, we interact with individuals, especially now after COVID, right? What happened like with the lockdowns and everything, people are eager to go out once again for long periods, like to meet individuals once again, the old friends, reconnect with them. So that's good. But also what's happening, it's a bit ridiculous in the industry. As we spoke with quite a few companies also, and when we ask them, okay, so you go to this 10, 15, 20 events a year, and what's the return, what's the ROI on that investment that you're making? And sometimes what we hear, they say, okay, there's not much investment, we just breaking even or we're just losing money. And okay, we ask them, okay, how do you make sense of that? So how is that beneficial for your company? And when the response we received in some cases is basically that if we don't go to that event, even though we're not, making any profit from that event, people gonna think that there's something wrong, that either we're going bankrupt or something is happening with our company. So that's to what degree we went. But how is that beneficial and how is that for the business, right? So that's what we try to fix with the 23, obviously, to provide this way. But definitely in-person events preferable for individuals, and 24 we are also going back to in-person event as well.
Fantastic. So you've got 3 main themes for next year's conference. Perhaps you could speak to why you picked them, really, because they're all quite, they resonate with a lot of people inside the space industry, but also further afield as well. So Yeah, I'll just recap them briefly. So, space sustainability, international cooperation initiatives, and reaching the unconnected. So, why those three themes?
Perfect. So let's start with reaching the unconnected, as that is the main theme for the 23 edition. What this means, there's two ways you can understand this basically. One way is obviously enabling persistent high data rate communications through satellite communications, obviously. But the second way, as we also understood it when we were organizing and deciding to put that as a main theme, is connecting companies, space agencies, organizations with potential partners and clients worldwide. So that's the main theme for reaching the unconnected in 23. And also now speaking about space sustainability, so that was the main theme for the 22 edition. But obviously one conference is not going to solve it all in regards to that issue. We had some great panels in 22 about space junk and what's happening with that. And it's sad to see that it's quite pessimistic in terms of the predictions, what's happening, and with the potential occurrence of Kessler syndrome in the next 10 years, right, when the debris is going to start just like crazy colliding with each other and spawning even more and more debris that will be like collateral, right? So it's very sad to see that, but obviously there's now all these projects happening, so we just want to ramp it up and make sure that this is given as much attention as it deserves and as it needs, right? So that's also space sustainability. And everything on our event is also then geared towards business and international partnerships. As you mentioned, the third theme. Unlike some other events, I'm not saying it's bad, but we don't have students that are pitching their papers or futuristic ideas. On our event, it's all business oriented, as we believe in a fast change, and we believe the fast change can only happen through business decisions.
Sure, and I guess as one of the pillars of your conference is sustainability, the fact it's all online obviously goes quite well. I think it's not a criticism, but it's something that's sort of glaringly obvious with these big conferences that promote sustainability. It's like, if you have thousands of people flying in from all over the world, you can only say you're sustainable up to a point, you know. So there's obviously the value in bringing people together through live events, but, you know, truly sustainable would be no one travels and everyone just stays at home and puts on some eye goggles and watch everything through the metaverse. So yeah, no, fair play that you're going down that road. How do you curate the speakers around the themes? Did you come up with the themes first and then go and find the speakers, or was it sort of a sort of mixture of contacts through the industry and using the same people as last time, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it is a mixture. It's not really using the same people. We obviously have some individuals that also spoke on 22 that are also speaking on 23. But mainly what we see this year is new faces. We have so last year we had 100 speakers. This year we have 120 individuals. We're around like 70% probably new faces. And how we chose the speakers, obviously the companies that resonated with the themes. So that was the main kind of differentiating factor when we were choosing which companies to approach to. And obviously the big companies in the field that, like, you know, if we talk about Sierra Space and so forth, right? So they were the desired audience, and the government agencies, obviously, as we have also government agencies like NASA, ESA represented. Also we have agencies from developing regions, like if we're talking about Philippines, or we talk about similar countries in South America, for example, or Africa, Kenya Space Agency, we have South African Republic Agency, we have also. So, yep, we're targeting a lot of those developing regions also for this year.
Excellent. So you say that the conference is quite business focused. What challenges do you think there are for entrepreneurs trying to enter the space industry? You know, it's never easy to start a company, period, in anything, but especially in the space industry, it seems to be very inaccessible at the moment anyway. So how do you think it differs? What are the barriers for entry that are there for the space industry that aren't for others?
So that's a good question. Actually, Martinez and I, so my partner and I, we have written a book, Space Business 101, and where we cover the 7 steps to position yourself in the next $1 trillion industry. So we're targeting we're covering everything basically from the point of creating an idea with keeping the space sustainability in mind, towards getting the partners, building a team of A players, the marketing, then scaling, the fundraising part. So everything is kind of covered in the book, which is a free resource. So Ben, probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you a link and you could include maybe after the episode that individuals could download who will be listening this. But what are the challenges? The challenges are that as the space industry is still like heavily engineering and science problems, right? That are happening in the companies, even though it's business, right? So, and they require the business skills. This is what we see lacking most of the time in the companies. Because if we look at the startups that are that are happening, majority of the founders, they are from the engineering or science background, which is nothing wrong with that. But they are working on creating the product, which this is one part of it, to create the product that actually works and is, tested, right? And has the heritage later once it's being tested. But then what happens, the problem is they have problems with actually commercializing that product and turning it into a sellable thing, right? That there's going to be a demand for. So that's the main issue that we see in the industry currently.
So just to go back to the conference again. So you want entrepreneurs, investors, customers, suppliers, so everyone to come to the event, and you want to encourage young entrepreneurs to start businesses in the space industry, basically.
Yep, so that's happening. We're also connecting space with non-space. So we're going to have companies from aviation, from the insurance side, from manufacturing side also that will be attending and looking to cooperate if we're talking also about medical side, medical industry. So there's going to be a lot of those adjacent industries that will be attending to explore the space services. So what our goal is, to make sure that the space services are also being distributed to those adjacent industries in those developing regions, because obviously there's a need for that, as we saw also in Turkey. There are huge industries in Turkey. If we're talking about maritime or agriculture, Turkey is actually number 7 by the agriculture output in the world. But there's not much integration of the spaceborne data in those industries, which leads to many things, right? If we're talking about maritime, it leads to the ETA, inaccuracies, right? Estimated time of arrival, and so forth. So that's also another thing that we're trying to fix with this conference. But it's going to be very much diverse. There's going to be the financial and VC sides that will be attending. There's going to be companies. There's going to be government agencies, adjacent industry representatives. The government side also, if we're talking about ministers of agriculture and so forth, similar industries as well, and from defense side obviously, and also we're going to have the students also that will be attending virtually to explore the opportunities, what's happening in the space industry, and also those individuals that are looking to get started with their company in the space. So it's quite diverse. It's also helping companies to reach those new talent also through this virtual conference, and provides a lot of benefits for the companies.
Fantastic. That sounds great. And I will definitely share the book Space Business 101.
Perfect.
Do you really
Awesome.
think it is the next $1 trillion industry? Because I hear people say that it's the next dot-com bubble or it's the next gold rush, and it makes it sound that it's just lying there and anyone can access it. But do you have any concerns that it's only going to be there for the countries that can get there first? So the richest countries in the world. How can we encourage? How can we ensure that countries which don't even have fast internet have access to this industry?
That's a great question. Obviously, that's been floating around for a long time already with the inclusion and space for all themes, right? So there's a lot of conversations happening about space for all, but is it actually being supported? Like, if we're talking about financial or technical support to make that happen, probably not the way it should be, right? Not enough, not nearly enough to support that. What I think about the next $1 trillion, it is definitely next $1 trillion industry, multi-trillion dollar industry, but there are also issues, and as we're talking about the space debris also, so that's a big issue that might prevent the industry from reaching its full potential or delay that process actually. But what we see also another trend, there's not a lot of things happening with the outer space missions, right? Outer space startups. We see a lot of companies that are supporting, like with the solar power, for example, missions, let's say asteroid mining missions and so forth, because that's kind of, they've also been already upcoming for a while. But it's not yet financially profitable because there's no VCs that are investing in that. So that's one of the issues. Because it's kind of long-term returns for them, and it's quite risky that the technology is not demonstrated up front. So, definitely we need to see more of those missions and more of the capital going towards missions like for outer space and exploration, versus then seeing more and more operators, going up there, overloading the bandwidth and so forth, right?
Excellent. That was quite a tough question, so very well answered. Obviously, we're talking about startups.
Yeah, it is a tough question. That doesn't really have one like true answer, right? To it. So,
exactly. And as you guys are a startup as well, and as we've said, you've got a business partner, Martinez, you seem to have quite a good partnership in the business. Both co-founders, you as the CEO, him more operation based. Did you naturally assume certain roles and responsibilities from day one? Did you notice that you had certain skill sets? I'm sort of asking from if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and you're thinking about, do I need a business partner for my startup? What advice would you give to them as to, what works for you guys as a partnership, and what your thoughts are around, do I need a business partner or not to get into the space industry?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question also. So in terms of responsibilities as a startup, it's really hard to define that, because there's throughout the day, the co-founders, you have to wear different hats of different employees. So it could be the case that in the morning you're the marketing department like leader, and in the afternoon you're creating the contracts as a legal department, and then obviously you're also the salesperson, and you are everything basically in the beginning of a startup, and there's overload of the work also happening, right? So it's very hard to define who's working on that, on what, and what responsibilities. So it's kind of been concurrent in many of the aspects until now still, right? But defining the roles was similarly easy in our company relatively, just because Martinez also had previous business experience. He's been operating businesses in 2 different industries, so in marketing and real estate. And myself, I came more from a operational background, like from running nonprofits and organizing the events and doing similar things. So that kind of was a bit easier for us to decide based on our trends.
Sure. So just putting the business stuff to us aside, you're also under the Altair brand, you have the Altair Academy, which I was quite intrigued by. Yep. I've just finished an MBA, which I've done over the last couple of years, all remotely, incidentally. So I'm definitely an advocate for not just higher education, but any sort of education about things that you're passionate in. So how did Altair Academy come about, and how does that fit in with the conference and the entrepreneurialism that we've talked about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Altair Academy, so what it is an on-demand platform. What it has is the courses, right? So that individuals from anywhere in the world can enroll into, given that they have internet connection. The reason why Altair Academy emerged is, as we see the reports and what's happening in the industry also, as an educational institution, what we are, Altair Enterprises, we're staying on top of what's happening in the industry, the trends, the statistics, right? We possess those insights. And what's happening is that there's a big gap happening between the companies and between the individuals that are just fresh out of the college. Over 50% of employers and over 50% of those same students are saying that and stating that they're not job ready yet, right? So they don't possess this specific skill set that can be applied in the job, even though they came out of a college, right? So there's this gap, and that's what Altair Enterprises is also solving with the Altair Academy by offering the courses from individuals that we have from leading companies and leading universities also that actually also working in the field. If we're talking about universities like Cambridge and Imperial College London, or if we're talking about, let's say, companies like ESA or Airbus or Yanai Space and other organizations and companies like that. We have instructors from those entities, and they have the online courses that are created. If we're talking about the Indian Space Research Organization or Egyptian Space Agency, so we have instructors from all over the world from those organizations, and they're sharing not only the theoretical knowledge that they have, but also they're in that theoretical knowledge, including the practical applications, right? Mainly also in the software software side.
Excellent. That sounds really interesting. I'll put these all in the show notes so people can read more. So let's just talk
Perfect.
about.
Thank you.
I have to bring this up in most podcasts. I don't think you can be a CEO of a space tech company without thinking about going to space yourself. Would you, if you had the opportunity? And if so, is there a particular company, private, let's say, that you'd particularly be drawn to if you had the opportunity to go to space?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Would love to space, and obviously the overview effect that I think that's, would be nice to give to those politicians that currently are making all this mess, right? In the world. It would be good to show them kind of how what the earth is and what the home is for them just to see, and, maybe change some of their standpoints, right? So that's kind of, okay, on a funny note. Yeah, I mean, would love to go, always since the young age wanted to go to Mars. That was kind of the goal, like on a bucket list, So, who knows? We'll check that box maybe very soon. Not very soon.
Absolutely.
Soon.
Well, Altair Mars does have a certain ring to it. So thinking about ambitions for the future, I know you said you want ISC to be one of the biggest remote space industry events. Mm-hmm. Where else do you want the company to go? Obviously, you want to scale it as much as possible, have the most impact you can, and I guess you want to do well yourselves, but you also want to inspire people to start their own companies as well. Have you got a sort of target for the next 5, 10, 20 years for Altair? Thinking big, what's your sort of hopes and dreams for the future?
We do. We have 10-year plan already with the timelines, obviously. A bit hard yet. It's kind of currently it's not lack of the plans and ideas. It's lack of the hands at the moment, right? In Altair, so that's what's happening. But the goal is definitely to accelerate this economy, to help individuals that are willing and that want to have this access to the space education, to get involved in the field. Right, so spreading the message and allowing also individuals to reach their full potential together with the companies. So that's the main goal.
Absolutely love it.
We have plans, a lot of the things that have never been done before. Obviously, that's going to be executed over the next years.
That's great, man. That's great. Just as a final thought, if you're a young person listening to this, you're thinking you want to be in the space industry, potentially start a company in the space industry. What advice would you give to them? Because I also have a few ideas of companies I would want to start, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. Where can we look to for ideas? What advice would you give for someone just wanting to be in the industry and have their own company?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So if you're brand new to the industry, the first thing you would need to do is do the research, right? So doing research can be coming in several ways. So one way would be to attend the events and conferences that are taking place, right? That's one way to learn from those experts, just what's happening in the industry, to get kind of the 360-degree overview, right? What's happening. Another way would be starting a podcast, for example, right? Because that's also what Martinez has been doing when he shifted to the space industry. I also was running a podcast and doing some interviews before, and we also have a podcast in Altair Enterprises. It's called Altair Insights also, where we kind of talk about the space business, right? So Altair Insights is a podcast where space meets business, and we have leading industry like thought leaders also, and from leading organizations and VCs that are in the space industry investing in that, and launch companies and satellite operators. So it would be definitely good for individuals to check that out. Or if they also want to start their own podcast and invite some of the individuals to create some connections, right, with the podcast interviews, that would be a good way to start. But for, let's say if you're not an engineer and you have obviously ideas, you will need a team. You will need to find a partner, which could be a long and tricky process also, because it's not an easy thing to do. As we write also in our book, so business partnership is just like marriage, right? It's even like harder than that, because if let's say the partners are splitting, it's definitely much harder than in the divorce. But yeah, it takes a lot of time until you get to know the individual. You have to really get to know the individual, connect on a personal level as well as on the like industry side and the interests and everything like that. And that could take some time, but definitely partners is the way to go to compensate for your lack of, let's say, if it's technical expertise or if it's the business side expertise that you need.
That's great advice. Nika, thank you very much for coming on. I'll share details of how people can sign up for the International Space Convention after this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. Pleasure.